What's up guys, I'm David. This is going to be my first episode of PharmCAS. So every week I'll probably be coming out with a new video on Wednesdays, and then probably on Fridays I'll come out with my med of the week. So I'll start with meloxicam this week, but I'll talk about that in another video. Today I wanted to discuss a little bit about me and my background, as well as how I got into pharmacy school. So I have a pretty complicated background as far as my education goes. I did start college right out of the bat, straight out of high school. I started summer classes, took both of my anatomies. I had a goal in mind to reach some kind of healthcare. I didn't know what I was going to want to do with it, but I knew that I wanted to do something with medicine. So I pursued nursing. Went ahead and took all my prereqs, went through my pharmacology course, went through health assessment, eventually got into the program at 18 years old and began my first semester. Also, alongside, I had a friend that was working as a pharmacy technician, and it was kind of interesting to me. Didn't really know anything about it, just thought it was cool working around meds. Might have been some good experience as a nursing student. So I went ahead and took her advice, studied up for it, ended up self-studying for my certified pharmacy technician exam through PTCE, passed it on the first try, and pursued a job at Walgreens. Didn't really know what I was getting into, but I actually fell in love with pharmacy, and fast forward a couple semesters later through nursing school, I realized that maybe nursing's not for everybody, so I went ahead and pursued pharmacy. I did drop out of nursing school, and I started all over from scratch and pursued a bachelor's degree in biochemistry. I originally went to school at University of Houston, Clear Lake, and then pursued pharmacy, and here I am in Chicago. So I will start my first semester and my first year of pharmacy school here in North Chicago at Rosalind Franklin University. So any questions about that? I can definitely discuss how I got to where I am from that original starting point. But today I do want to talk about the main characteristics that it took for me to get into pharmacy school, other than blood, sweat, and tears. Just kidding. But to start off, I definitely recommend looking into the profession. Pharmacy is definitely not for everybody. It is similar to medical school, but at the same time it is definitely different than it, in that you focus so much more into the pharm, a little bit less into the immunology, things like that. It will be in the first semester of mine, but pathophysio, things like that. But beyond that, it's all pharmaceutics onwards. So I did outline a couple things for y'all that I went ahead and focused on that got me successfully into 4 pharmacy schools, but I did end up pursuing Chicago, and that it kind of felt like home here. Not only the weather is beautiful right now, we'll see about how that goes for the winter, considering I am moving from Texas, but definitely let y'all know. So first things off, the PCAT. It is that pharmacy college admissions test. One of the most important factors, but definitely not the biggest one as far as getting into pharmacy school. The PCAT is definitely considered a rigorous test. So I didn't know what I was getting into the first time I took it, but I definitely prepared just in case for the worst. It's composed of several things like your biology, your chemistry, both your language, reading, things like that, and then of course the math. As of right now, there is a writing portion on it that changes every year. I don't know, sounds to me like some previous students have had to take a verbal part of it, but I'm not sure if that's still going to be something that they'll do or if that's something that they're going to reincorporate into it. But as of right now, biochemistry, language, math, and then the writing portion. Some advice that I took from some previous pharmacy students and from the pharmacists that I have worked with is not only to learn the content, but to learn the test. This test, like I said, was very rigorous for me in that it was probably about 4.5 hours. There was one break in between, it was about 15 minutes. And then you could take certain breaks throughout, but it would deduct from your time. And something that I will say is the time, more importantly than anything else. So it starts off with your composition, which is the writing portion. You have 20 minutes to not only read the prompt, but also compose a well-formed, at least 5-paragraph essay, is what I went ahead and did. I had several prompts. I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, but I'll tell y'all. One of them was about how to end the third world poverty and how to feed the famished within third world countries. The prompt that was an ethical decision about artificial insemination, I think is what it was. And then I think it was just the only 2. Right off on the bat, the first thing you click into the test, it automatically starts the timer, and you're not only panicking, but you're thinking about, you know, am I going to start off with? What's my introduction? My first word of advice is don't start with your intro, actually leave it till the end. Something that I found out was on my first time taking the PCAT, I did take it twice, was that I was stuck on the introduction and I almost lost like 10 minutes just trying to figure out what I wanted to do for the intro. When the second time I took it, I immediately skipped it, went on to the first thing in my head, just started jotting down a bunch of thoughts, and at the end I was able to basically form it all together, make it look pretty, and put a title on it, things like that, indent, little things. So definitely would recommend for the composition, at least 4 paragraphs, try and get in 5, but you do want your intro 2 body paragraphs and a conclusion, definitely a title and indent. I'm not sure if it submits with all that proper formatting, but for me, I think it looked professional. The second thing, immediately after you click after, it brings you to biology. This was something that I definitely did not suffer on too bad, in that it was a lot of anatomy, a lot of microbiology. That was the same for both exams, so it sounds to me like that's a big thing to focus on. You have a little bit of immunology, not too much. Other than that, strictly AMP and a lot of microbiology. Those questions were definitely not too bad, but there were a lot of pictures, and it was a lot of statistics, analyzing statistics, and then a lot of estimating with like blood types, things like that. I would definitely look into your anatomy and microbiology. One more time, anatomy and microbiology, anatomy and microbiology. Anatomy and microbiology. Moving on, I think I had my chemistry next. Right after chemistry there was a break, so I was like, the hardest part's almost over. The chemistry for me was the hardest. I went in the first time taking my PCAT with only organic chemistry 1. I would definitely not wait until organic chemistry 2, and that you do learn everything you need for the exam by the end of OChem 1. So if you are planning on taking the PCAT around November and you're still taking OChems, I don't know if that's going to be your track or not, I would definitely consider self-studying a lot of the organic chemistry, watching YouTube videos, and specifically Khan Academy helped me a lot. As far as the chemistry portion goes, it was very quick. That was the one that I was running out of time on. I found that I put a little less attention on the organic chemistry questions and a lot of focus on the general chem, which I knew that I was confident in. For somebody that has kind of suffered in the general chemistry but then prospered a lot in the OChem, if you're just an overall great student, then go in and nail that chemistry portion. But for me, I wasn't too familiar with the organic chemistry other than nomenclature and the beginning of the intro compounds. So I just went in confidently with my general chemistry knowledge. There was a lot of acid-base reduction formulas, things like that. A lot of the organic chemistry mechanisms, reactions, things like that. But there were definitely ones that you could learn, and I found out the second time taking it that I was confident in those mechanisms and those reactions, like flipping through them. There was a lot of pictures you would have to analyze, and that took a lot of time. So definitely as far as learning the test, which I'll talk about at the end, was something that benefited me in the chemistry portion. So you made it through the composition, the bio, and the chemistry. Now you get your 15-minute break where you can kind of finally take a breath. I would definitely recommend going to the bathroom because that next portion is long, the reading and the math. For me, I took the whole 15 minutes. Some people like to just get in, do what they got to do, and then come right back. I needed a minute to just breathe. It's a very intense test, and it's a very fast pace, so I feel like I needed a moment just to kind of recollect my thoughts. I don't think I was allowed to like get in my locker or anything like that, so don't expect to be able to like last minute prepare before your reading and math portion. Definitely go in there prepared just as you did for your bio, your writing, and your chemistry. When I came back, signed back in, immediately started me with reading, and that one for me it was draining. The reading is about 8 prompts. I think there's about 8 questions on it. The way that the PCAT works is that some questions aren't necessarily graded, but you don't know which ones they are. So I definitely answered all of them confidently, or at least as confidently as I could. So as far as those 8 questions each, like you do need to learn how to skim read if that's not something that you're familiar or that you're comfortable with. I found that I was trying to read every detail, and that actually ended up making me run out of time the first time. It was not too bad, but I left about, I want to say almost 7 questions blank. So I do think that hurt me as overall for my composite score. Something that I would also recommend that you might have learned like throughout high school, even middle school, is reading the question first, especially for this portion. Immediately, if you read that question, you'll be able to find it when you're skimming through within that 3rd, 4th paragraph. There are long stories, they're about 8 paragraphs each. It's kind of an 888 rule is what I would recommend, going by 8 stories, 8 questions each, and 8 paragraphs. It is very long, each one of them. The questions aren't too hard, there's a lot of vocabulary, so I would study up on that. But overall, definitely timing is of the essence with this one and with your chemistry. After that, math came last. After you're totally drained, you have the hardest portion of the test. Just kidding, but it's not too bad. I think that it was less of the calculus, but definitely a lot of pre-calculus and algebra 2. I wasn't too caught up on my algebra 2 background, but I definitely just taken pre-cal the semester before. I was still pretty familiar with those concepts with like the trigonometry and things like that. But this one is a lot of statistics as well. I hadn't taken stats. I was just thinking mean, median, mode for every one of the questions. Not gonna get you by. So if you haven't taken stats yet, that's something you should review. Consider self-studying, definitely. The stats portion kicked me in the butt on this one. So I know stats is not the hardest class. I'm not undermining that education whatsoever, but it definitely threw me for a loop as far as that one goes. So overall, the first time I took my PCAT, I had a composite of a 421. I took that in November of 2017, so last year. I felt pretty confident on that score considering I didn't have the most of the upper level sciences, upper level math, things like that in my bag. So I definitely felt pretty confident as far as that goes, but I knew that I could do better, and so I wanted to get at least a 450 was my score, a little bit higher on average. That score threw me into the 67th percentile, which is above average, but for me to be an outstanding student or for you to want to stick out, again, your PCAT is not the biggest thing that will get into pharmacy school, but it's definitely a big factor. I was reaching for about a 75 that were higher on my percentile. So I went ahead and repaid for the exam. I scheduled it for February, and that gave me time to finish my OChem 1. I was able to self-study a little bit more on my statistics, and I went back in way more confident than the first time. Again, like I had said earlier that I would talk about learning the test. This is something that is so important in my opinion. Like I said, the timing is definitely a huge factor. Also, there's a lot of books, especially the Kaplan is the one that I used, the Kaplan PCAT. It was just 2018, 2019 form. This taught me about which one would be the better answer. This is something I also learned in nursing school, that there will always be 2 correct answers. There'll probably be one that's a little ridiculous and then one that's not exactly right for this one. There'll be 2 that are good, but which of those 2 are better? That was something that I noticed. When I remembered some of the questions going back on them, I could have answered the other one and that probably would have been better for that question specifically. Definitely would recommend getting that Kaplan book and reading over it, just seeing the correct way to answer the question is, along with how to learn your timing. Again, I said skim reading, that's a huge one. All of the questions for all the topics seem to incorporate a lot of these data charts, a lot of analyzing, a lot of reading comprehension, things like that you have to be quick on analyzing your time. I gave myself about 45 seconds to read each question, and that still didn't seem like enough the first time. I think on average you have about a little less than a minute for each portion to answer the question, which seems like a lot, but if I had to be honest, it's definitely not, because you just have so much science, so much math going through your head at that time. So definitely learn the exam for your PCAT. Moving forward, some other factors that are not so much content related, but more so your personality and who you are as a future pharmacist would be your experience. So like I said, I did just on a dime go and take my PTCE and see if I wanted to pursue a pharmacy technician career to start off with, and I do not regret it whatsoever. I will say retail is a little rigorous. I have not burnt out or anything like that crazy, but retail is definitely intense. I would have loved to pursue sterile processing and seeing if maybe hospital is a little bit more for me, but it's not a bad idea to get yourself in the door. So definitely looking into certified pharmacy technician. To me, what I've noticed with a lot of the kids that I interviewed with was that almost every one of us were a pharmacy technician for every school I interviewed at. I feel like it's almost a given now, unless you are an outstanding student, which again, like this might be a huge factor too, but being that pharmacy technician, I feel like it's almost like you're not a pharmacy technician and you're applying to pharmacy school. I know that sounds bad, but it kind of makes you feel more confident in that this is what path you want to pursue, because you are working along pharmacists all day. You see what they're doing, and then you learn, like, that's what I want to do in the future. That's a goal I want to work towards. And then also being able to delegate over technicians, having that leadership role is awesome. So I think that that definitely shows confidence in the degree that you're trying to pursue. You're not just going into healthcare and like, oh, pharmacy would be cool, oh, the money would be great, things like that. Definitely look into your PTCE. That exam was self-study for me. Like I said, I studied for about 2 weeks, 4 hours a day for that one. I got the Mosman's, I think is what it was, Mosby. I think it was the pharmacy technician certification exam study guide. It was a yellow book. I would definitely recommend that from like Barnes & Noble. I think it was about $50. I'm sure you can find one online. But I will say that it definitely prepared me very well for the technician exam, and that I passed it on the first try. After that, it's smooth sailing. You just get with your state as far as background and things like that go. So like I said, I worked at Walgreens I still work at Walgreens for 2 years. I actually moved to, like I said, Chicago, Illinois here, and I found out that Deerfield, which is our corporate location, is like right around the corner from my school. So I thought that was really cool that I'm like here in the mecca of not only Walgreens, there's a CVS headquarter here, there's a bunch of big pharma, Shire, Takeda, AbbVie. Not per se what I want to go into, drug industry. If that's for you, that's awesome. I think that's really cool that you do want to try and find new medications for new people. But other than experience, as far as your personal, I guess, folio as a whole, there's also your
grades.
It's definitely still very competitive, but the grades are a little bit more holistic from what I've noticed. Unless you're applying to things like UT Austin, Purdue, top schools around the nation, which are taking like more than 1,400 applicants every year, you do want to build yourself a very holistic background. So again, your PCAT, your experience, your grades, and your personal statement, things like that. As far as grades go, I applied to pharmacy schools with a 3.4. The nursing school thing was something that they did point out for me personally. Every single school that I interviewed with said, why did you drop out of nursing? Why didn't you pursue nurse practitioner? Yada yada. That's not what I wanted to do when I found out. So I had that consultation level with patients. It's not that you don't get to do that in nursing. It's that you are flipping through patients all day with nursing. I feel like with pharmacy, that concept, at least with retail from what I've noticed, I haven't learned like the hospital experience yet. But as far as retail goes, that ability for a patient to come up and basically have a free appointment with no, scheduling necessary kind of thing, just to come up and ask a couple questions about their medications. You as a pharmacist are kind of that intermediate. And I love that you can kind of answer any questions that maybe the doctor can't get right to. Overall, yeah, that's just something that I really fell in love with as far as the patient face-to-face interaction. It's literally just a window of a free appointment. I think that's so cool. So that was a huge thing as far as that goes, but back to grades. I don't know where I got off topic on that one. Like I said, 3.4. So that was something that I was a little bit lower on, but I definitely made up for it in my PCAT. That second time, I think I entered with a composite of a 77, and apparently that was enough to stand out. So it was enough at least for a couple pharmacy schools, or a few. But yeah, so I would definitely recommend pursuing a bachelor's degree. That's something that does point out to a lot of students, but if it's not, then definitely build yourself holistically, have a good PCAT score, have good undergraduate grades, etc. So last thing that I said I'd mention was the personal statement. This was through PharmCAS, and then there are some supplemental applications that you'll have that will ask you to write a personal statement, why you want to go into pharmacy, what you're going to do to contribute to the healthcare, the opioid crisis, things like that. What are you going to do to better the community as a whole? As far as that goes, this is where you can really show yourself off and use a lot of your personal experience, but definitely make it straight to the point and don't overwrite. I think some of them have limits. PharmCAS definitely does. I built this into a very, again, I say holistic overall view of myself. So I did throw in some religious components, and that I do practice Judaism. I was able to kind of incorporate what I do for the community with that. I did talk about my experience a little bit more and what I've witnessed. I was able to work as a floating pharmacy technician through Walgreens. So I worked at over 9 locations back in Texas and saw different clientele through every one of those Walgreens. You know, you see elderly, you see women's health, HIV, but there was a lot of diabetic patients for one location, things like that. So something that you can really show that you have definitely witnessed the disparities with healthcare. And then this is also your moment to show what you want to do with pharmacy. So, like I said, there's some people that want to do drug industry, but for me, I wanted to do more managing patient therapy. I don't per se think I want to go into retail. Now that I've seen it, I don't dislike it. It's definitely very interesting, like I said, with the consultation idea. But for me, it's rigorous. It's very intense, and I worry that sometimes those 12-hour shifts can get to you. I've seen it with a lot of pharmacists before. As far as your personal statement, again, highlighting your experience, personal hobbies, religion, non-medical or academic factors about yourself, and then what you want to do with it. So like I said, I did want to go into managing patient therapy. Something that I've always found interesting was HIV and AIDS medications. When I was practicing as a pharmacy technician in downtown Houston, I found that it was very populated with a lot of HIV medications, heart therapy, things like that. And while we know so much now, and while HIV is no longer a death sentence, there's still so much more to be discovered, especially with that recent medication, because it's been out for over 5 years now, but Truvada has been game-changing for prophylaxis, things like that. So I definitely want to go into managing a lot of the immunocompromised side of that and seeing what we can do to change the incidence rate, the mortality rate, things like that with cancer patients, especially that are affected with HIV, AIDS, things like that. So that's why literally just spotlights on me is about what I wanted to do as far as your personal statement goes. One more thing that I did definitely have was I was in not one but 2 hurricanes in Houston. So there was Harvey and Ike, and for both of those I was able to contribute by volunteering. This is another thing experience-wise that was unpaid. This is something that a lot of schools have pointed out in my interviews. You know, what did you do through Red Cross? What did you do to help contribute to the community as far as that goes? Was it paid, etc.? For me, I feel like this was a very big factor as far as getting in. I had over 80 hours of volunteering through Red Cross. That was for both Harvey and for Ike. It was very cool to actually experience that. I worked along with doctors and pharmacists at Red Cross through their healthcare section. I was able to run scripts for patients, work with a lot of Walgreens, CVS pharmacists, doctors that came down from the East Coast. It was a very excellent experience, and I would definitely recommend starting your volunteering off now if pharmacy is what you're considering pursuing. It definitely shows that you've been able to see what is out there and what people can't afford and what people do have to go through every day. The concept of poverty, I guess, that people don't really, that we seem to like shadow sometimes when we work into retail. I know we do see a lot of patients that can't afford their medications, but it's different. With volunteering, I feel like it's homeless patients. And so with that, that definitely was a highlighting point that I was able to speak about for my interviews. I can say a little bit more about the interview as well. I can talk about that in probably another video because that was a lot, a lot to prepare for. I will definitely make a new video on that one. If you all have any recommendations, again, this is my first video for that PharmCAS. I will be coming out with Med of the Week probably on Friday, so if you have any ideas, definitely let me know. But otherwise, I will talk about my interview in the next video. Thanks so much.